Sophia Carter looked like the perfect wife, and Ethan Carter seemed like the perfect husband until betrayal uncovered a dark secret in their basement that would shock everyone who thought they knew them. Sophia Carter's life looked flawless to anyone watching from the outside. She had a comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood, 2 children she adored, and a husband, Ethan, who seemed dedicated to his career and providing for the family. Friends often praised her for being graceful under pressure, managing school events, family routines, and social gatherings, while still presenting herself as the picture of a loving wife. 2 neighbors. They were the couple everyone admired. A family that embodied stability and happiness. But beneath the polished exterior, there were cracks forming in their marriage. Cracks Sophia was only beginning to notice. It began with subtle shifts in Ethan's behavior. He stayed late at work more often, returning home long after the children were asleep. He brushed off family dinners with excuses about deadlines and urgent meetings. Sophia tried to dismiss the unease, telling herself these were normal sacrifices for a demanding job, but the excuses began to pile up. Eating grew distant, pulling away when she tried to connect. His phone never left his side, always placed face down, as though hiding something. When she reached out, his warmth felt replaced with cold indifference. Nights became heavy with doubt as Sophia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. While Ethan claimed to be swamped with work, she thought back to the years they had spent building their life together. From the days of dreaming about travel and raising children to the quiet promises of growing old side by side, those dreams now seemed to fade, replaced by an uncomfortable truth that something in her marriage had shifted beyond repair. Sophia began to question herself, wondering if she had missed signs, or if there had always been secrets lurking beneath Ethan's calm exterior. Her growing unease turned to suspicion, and suspicion became unbearable. One evening, while Ethan showered, his phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Sophia's hands trembled as she picked it up, her heart pounding with both dread and curiosity. She told herself she might not find anything, that perhaps she was over. But what she discovered shattered the fragile trust holding her world together. Text messages, photographs, and notes revealed Ethan's affair with another woman, Rachel Morgan. Their conversations were not fleeting or careless. They were intimate, filled with promises, shared laughter, and plans for stolen weekends. The evidence was undeniable. Sophia dropped the phone onto the couch, her breath shallow as she processed the betrayal. The pain wasn't just about Ethan's infidelity, it was about the time he had stolen from their children. The money spent on Rachel, and the lies that had been layered so carefully into their daily lives. Every sacrifice Sophia had made as a wife and mother felt mocked by the cruel reality in front of her. For a long time, she sat in silence, numb with disbelief. Then, as the initial shock faded, anger and sorrow mingled into something darker. The image of Rachel's name glowing across Ethan's phone replayed in her mind like a cruel reminder of what had been stolen. That night marked the moment when Sophia Carter changed. The trusting wife who had once devoted her life to family was gone, replaced by a woman who felt betrayed, humiliated, and consumed by the need to take control over the life Ethan had unraveled with his deception. Sophia Carter woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a pounding heart. The discovery of Ethan's affair had left her restless, but she forced herself through the motions of a normal day. She prepared breakfast for the children, smiled when they left for school, and kept her voice steady when Ethan casually mentioned a late meeting. But inside, her emotions churned. She felt like a stranger in her own home, trapped in a reality where every word from Ethan was poisoned by lies. She began to notice details she had overlooked before. The new cologne Ethan wore wasn't something she had ever bought him. His shirts, once wrinkled from long hours at the office, now smelled faintly of perfume. His credit card statements revealed dinners at expensive restaurants, charges that didn't match his excuses of grabbing fast food during late shifts. Sophia pieced these moments together like fragments of a puzzle, each confirming what she already knew. Ethan wasn't just unfaithful, he was living a double life. The name Rachel Morgan echoed in her thoughts with sharp precision. Who was this woman that Ethan had risked everything for? Sophia imagined her young, glamorous, and carefree, offering him a life free of responsibility. She wanted to believe Rachel had seduced Ethan into betraying their family, but another part of her knew Ethan made his own choices. The betrayal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, sustained, and cruel. The more Sophia thought about Rachel, the more the anger inside her deepened. She tried confiding in her closest friend, Olivia Brooks, who lived 2 houses down. Olivia noticed Sophia's distraction and fatigue, often catching her staring off into space during coffee mornings. Sophia, however, couldn't bring herself to confess. The humiliation was unbearable. To admit that her husband was in love with another woman felt like surrendering a part of her pride. Instead, she kept quiet, building a wall of silence around her grief and anger. At night, when Ethan claimed to be working late, Sophia followed him. She parked her car a few blocks away from his office and watched from a distance. Instead of heading inside, Ethan walked confidently toward a black sedan that pulled up at the curb. Rachel Morgan stepped out, smiling, as Ethan embraced her with the ease of someone who had done it many times before. Sophia's chest tightened as she watched them drive away together. The image seared into her memory, proof she couldn't deny even if she wanted to. Returning home, Sophia collapsed onto the couch, shaking with rage and devastation. She realized Ethan wasn't planning to end the affair. He wasn't stumbling into mistakes, he had made a choice to live this way. In that moment, Sophia's pain shifted into something more dangerous. She no longer thought of herself as a victim. Instead, her mind began racing with possibilities. How long could this go on? How much longer could she pretend everything was fine? The life she had built, the sacrifices she had made, seemed worthless if Ethan continued to betray her. Her mind lingered on the unthinkable. For the first time, Sophia allowed herself to imagine a world without Ethan. The thought terrified her, but it also gave her a twisted sense of power. She had been silenced, betrayed, and humiliated. But if she acted, she could take control back. That night, Sophia lay awake, not with despair, but with a growing plan. She didn't know every detail yet, but she knew one thing for certain. Ethan Carter's betrayal would not go unpunished. Sophia Carter's thoughts grew darker with each passing day. What had started as raw heartbreak quickly twisted into obsession. She could no longer look at Ethan without picturing Rachel Morgan's face, smiling in that car, leaning into him as though their marriage meant nothing. Every dinner Sophia prepared, every conversation she forced herself to have in front of the children, felt like a performance staged for a man who had already abandoned her in spirit. She began to study Ethan, noting his movements, his habits, and his routines, with an intensity that frightened even her. At first, it was small observations when he left for work. What time he returned, how often he texted late into the night. Then, she pushed further. She checked his emails, scrolled through bank accounts, and even peeked at his GPS history. What she uncovered left her breathless. Hotel bookings under his name, receipts for gifts she never received, and patterns that aligned perfectly with Rachel's presence. The betrayal was mapped out in numbers and locations, undeniable and cruel. The knowledge fueled something inside Sophia that she had never felt before. Rage didn't just sit quietly in her chest, it grew, filling every corner of her thoughts until it consumed her. Still, she kept her composure in public. To the children, she was the same attentive mother. To Ethan, she was calm, even affectionate. She kissed him goodbye, packed his lunches, and asked about his day, as though nothing was wrong. Ethan never suspected that behind her steady eyes, she was planning. Sophia began testing scenarios in her mind. Divorce crossed her thoughts, but it felt hollow. Ethan would leave with Rachel, and she would be left with nothing but a broken family and humiliation. She thought about confrontation, screaming the truth in his face until he admitted everything. But that wouldn't erase the betrayal or heal the wounds. No matter how she pictured it, every scenario ended with her suffering while Ethan walked free. The unthinkable became easier to consider. She started to imagine Ethan's life ending, not as a fleeting thought, but as a real possibility. One night, when Ethan claimed he had another late meeting, Sophia prepared herself differently. She cleaned the kitchen, tucked the children into bed, and waited for silence to settle over the house. Then, she walked to the basement. It was a space Ethan rarely visited, cluttered with boxers and tools. In the stillness of that room, Sophia began moving things around, clearing a corner, rearranging items in ways that looked insignificant but served a larger purpose. Her hands trembled, yet her mind was sharp, calculating each step with chilling clarity. The basement became her secret. Each evening, when Ethan was gone, Sophia returned there, adding small details, preparing it piece by piece. She wasn't entirely sure if she was preparing it for confrontation, punishment, or something far worse, but the line between those blurred quickly. With every box shifted and every tool polished, The unthinkable felt more like destiny. By the time Ethan returned home late that night, smiling faintly and mumbling about overtime, Sophia had already transformed. She looked at him with calmness, masking her storm. In her heart, she knew Ethan's fate was sealed. The woman who once built her life around his happiness now quietly plotted his end. Sophia Carter's plan moved from thought to action on a night that seemed ordinary to everyone else. The children were spending the evening at a sleepover, and Ethan announced he would be late again, his usual excuse polished with lies. But Sophia had prepared for this night with careful precision. She had rehearsed each step in her mind until it felt natural, almost inevitable. The basement was no longer a storage space. It had become the stage where everything would end. She set the house in order with unsettling calmness. The dishes were washed, the counters wiped clean, and not a trace of disorder remained. Sophia lit a single candle in the kitchen, more for herself than for anyone else, and sat quietly, waiting for Ethan to return. Each tick of the clock stretched longer than the last, and when the sound of his car finally pulled into the driveway, her heart beat with a steady rhythm. She wasn't nervous anymore. She was resolved. Ethan entered with his usual distracted air, scrolling through his phone, his jacket carelessly slung over one arm. He greeted Sophia with a half-smile, oblivious to the storm behind her, composed expression. She suggested he join her in the basement, claiming she needed help moving a few boxers. It wasn't unusual. Ethan rarely questioned small requests. Without hesitation, he followed her down the wooden steps. Unaware, he was walking into his final moments. The basement was dim, the air thick with silence. Sophia guided him to the far corner where she had cleared the space. Tools hung neatly on the wall, their metallic glint faint in the low light. Ethan bent over to lift one of the boxers, still distracted by his buzzing phone. In that instant, Sophia acted. She picked up the heavy iron tool she had placed within reach days earlier. With all the strength her fury had built over weeks of betrayal, she brought it down. The sound was sharp, final, echoing in the cold basement. Ethan collapsed, confusion flashing across his face as blood pooled beneath him. Sophia stood frozen for a moment, her chest heaving, staring at the man she once loved, lying motionless on the floor. The reality of what she had done rushed over her, but instead of regret, there was only silence. The years of humiliation, the endless lies, the image of Rachel Morgan, everything had led to this. Sophia moved quickly, her mind shifting from rage to survival. She dragged Ethan's body toward the spot she had prepared, her movements fueled by adrenaline. She worked with chilling efficiency, covering every trace, wiping surfaces, and arranging the scene so it appeared untouched. Each action was deliberate, a ritual to conceal the truth from the world. When it was finished, she stood at the base of the stairs, looking at what remained of Ethan Carter. The man who had betrayed her, the husband who had torn their family apart, was gone. Upstairs, the house remained calm, a stark contrast to the horror below. Sophia blew out the candle in the kitchen, leaving the home in darkness. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. She whispered to herself in the stillness of the night, not with guilt, but with a sense of grim finality. Ethan Carter's affair had ended, and Sophia's unthinkable choice was now carved into reality. Detective Marcus Halley was called to the Carter residence after neighbors reported a strange odor coming from the basement windows. By then, days had passed since Ethan Carter was last seen, and whispers had begun to spread about his sudden disappearance. Sophia Carter greeted the officers with her usual composure, explaining that Ethan had left for a work trip and never returned. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the exhaustion of holding together a story that was already starting to unravel. When investigators entered the basement, the truth quickly surfaced. Beneath a poorly disguised section of flooring, Ethan's body was discovered. The scene bore the unmistakable marks of a violent struggle, and though Sophia had tried to cover her tracks, blood traces remained. The basement reeked not just of decay, but of premeditation. Detective Halley studied Sophia's reaction carefully. She didn't break into tears, didn't protest the discovery. She simply stood frozen, her lips pressed tightly together, as though her silence was her only defense. Sophia was taken into custody, and the case moved swiftly. The community was stunned. Many knew the Carters as a picture-perfect family. Friends recalled Sophia's devotion to her children, her seemingly flawless marriage, and her reputation as a loyal wife. But as the investigation unfolded, layers of betrayal and heartbreak were revealed. Text messages, hotel receipts, and Ethan's secret meetings with Rachel Morgan all came into evidence, painting a picture of infidelity that could not be ignored. In court, prosecutor David Turner presented Sophia as a woman consumed by jealousy and rage, someone who chose vengeance over reason. He argued that countless others had endured the pain of betrayal, but never resorted to murder. Defense attorney Natalie Pierce, however, told a different story. She described Sophia as a woman pushed beyond her breaking point, living in a web of lies that shattered her mental stability. Natalie argued that Sophia's actions, while horrific, were the result of emotional devastation and desperation rather than cold-blooded intent. Judge Rebecca Lawson listened intently as witnesses were called. Rachel Morgan herself took the stand, her voice trembling as she recounted her relationship with Ethan. She admitted to the affair, but insisted she never expected it to destroy Sophia S.'s life in such a violent way. The courtroom was filled with gasps as Sophia S.'s friend Olivia Brooks testified about the changes she had seen in her neighbor late nights in the basement. A distant stare and a growing tension that no one fully understood until it was too late. Throughout the trial, Sophia remained composed. She did not deny what she had done, nor did she attempt to justify it in her own words. Instead, she sat quietly, allowing her attorneys to argue her state of mind. For some, her silence made her appear cold and remorseless. For others, it seemed like the final act of a broken woman who no longer had the strength to fight. When the verdict was delivered, the courtroom held its breath. Sophia Carter was found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentence ensured she would spend decades behind bars, far from her children and the life she had once carefully built. Yet even in that moment, the story felt incomplete. To some, Sophia was a monster who destroyed her family out of selfish rage. To others, she was a victim of betrayal, pushed into the unthinkable by years of deceit. Detective Marcus Holley closed the file with a heavy sigh, knowing that no sentence could erase the tragedy. A husband was dead, a wife imprisoned, and 2 children left to carry the scars of their parents' choices. What had once seemed like an ordinary marriage had ended in betrayal. Blood! And a basement that would forever hold the truth of what Sophia Carter had done.